Charlie Chaplin had his own way of showing us that just getting along in a complicated world is not easy.
The history of the motion picture. A series in which we follow the growth of a new art. Its earliest beginnings. The first concept of the development of story and spectacle. And the great stars. All a part of the history of the motion picture.
No figure in movie history progressed as quickly as did Charles Chaplin. In 1914, he made 35 mostly crude comedies for Max Sennett. In 1915, as director-star, he turned out 16 much improved films for S&A. The following year, Chaplin produced for Mutual a series of 12 comic masterpieces. Easy Street was the 8th. Easy Street, the toughest part of town. Edna Purviance always brought out the latent nobility in Chaplin's tramp character. She was his leading lady from 1915 to 1925. She remained on his pension list after her retirement. And Still Beautiful played a bit role in his last American film, Limelight. Max Sennett used policemen for laughs. He made them comic characters by stripping them of dignity. Chaplin was more subtle. His usual attitude was that of the vagrant, to whom the cop is an eternal enemy. The bully is Eric Campbell, one of Chaplin's regular comic villains, whose career was tragically curtailed by an automobile accident shortly after this film was made. A hard-pressed but deserving family. The wife, the father, With only 3 years of films behind him, Chaplin was now, in 1917, already Hollywood's biggest star. But a new clown, an acrobat just out of vaudeville, was beginning to attract attention. In a minute, we'll see more of Buster Keaton. By 1922, Buster Keaton, too, had become a star, a clown who expected the worst and was seldom disappointed. While Chaplin's encounter with policemen in Easy Street was staged within his studio, Keaton, in this film, Cops, took his cameras outdoors. Most of his best films were against realistic backgrounds. Keaton frequently found himself being chased without knowing why or whom he had offended. Buster Keaton was to retain his acrobatic agility even until the 50s, when he took some spectacular falls with Chaplin in Limelight. Harry Langdon, the pure pantomimist. Unlike Keaton or Chaplin, he had a childlike faith in the goodness of humanity. He was too innocent to recognize misfortune. He wished only to live and let live. Harry often played the young man about to marry reluctantly, or the hopelessly henpecked husband. Harry was afraid of girls, wanted to like them, but didn't feel quite ready for them. This scene foreshadows a highlight of Langdon's greatest feature, his classic encounter with the vamp in The Strong Man. Harry is persuaded, and later that afternoon, slapstick cropped up in many of these two-reelers that Langdon did for Senate. But the particular delicate gesture was his own. This sequence and Langdon's little wave of greeting somehow sum up his screen personality. Hesitant, almost afraid of being rejected, yet friendly and open with a genuine humility. His wife. There was an inconsistency in many of the two-reelers that Langdon made for Senate, depending on who's at the moment. If it was Senate, then slapstick would dominate. But if Harry were alone with his favorite director, Frank Capra, who made this film, they would concentrate on working out the subtler comedy routines that would reach full fruition for both in the years to come. The Boyfriends. period, Harry Langdon was considered a serious rival to Chaplin. He moved into features after only a year or two with Senate, and turned out 2 or 3 of the screen's finest comedy classics. Then he began to believe he could write and direct his own material. It didn't work. Harry Langdon was playing in B pictures unworthy of his talent when in the early 40s he died, bemused still unable to understand where he had failed and why. We have seen the great sad clowns, as each was on the threshold of his finest work. Other programs in this series will be devoted to each of them individually.